Oh, good morning, everyone. I hope you're all doing well this morning. I'm going to crack straight on. I have a few things to say today. If you follow me on Twitter, you might have seen this morning I sent out a tweet about a story. The Darren Osborne trial is currently ongoing. Darren Osborne is the man accused of the mosque attack in Finsbury Park last year. Now, his trial is ongoing, and expect a great deal of media coverage about this trial, and expect a great deal of media lies and propaganda. Now, one such example, I'm going to go and have a look at it now and read some of it out to you. And this is the one that we sent out on Twitter this morning. And it's still, and I'll just quickly refresh the page just to make sure. The headline, I will tweet everything out in a few minutes when I'm finished here. The headline still, at this moment, on The Independent, reads, "Messages sent by Tommy Robinson to terror suspect Darren Osborne revealed in court." Now, this big mainstream media is very clever. And what they will do is smear and propagandize while keeping it within the law. Having said that, I do hope that Tommy Robinson is seeking legal advice on this. But my suspicion is that this will be just about within the law. But even when that's the case, the propaganda is still obvious and the intent is still obvious. And it is obvious that these journalists are salivating at the opportunity to demonize Tommy Robinson, and by extension, anyone who dares to say anything negative about Islam. The headline is heavily implies that Tommy Robinson has been in direct contact with Darren Osborne. However, over on Twitter, we see that the journalist, who perhaps didn't write the headline, but I'll go through the article itself in a few seconds, put out on Twitter, the two messages from Mr. Robinson were automated emails sent out to a mailing list of subscribers to the Rebel website. Why then does the headline, when anyone can subscribe and anyone can get these messages, as they do, we all know how subscribing works, why then, even knowing this, does the headline still so strongly imply that Tommy Robinson is in direct contact with Darren Osborne? We all know the reason. They are desperate to connect him, and by extension, anyone who's critical of Islam, with this attack and any other that might take place. Now, if you read down, it says in the second paragraph, Woolwich Crown Court previously heard he, Darren Osborne, became brainwashed after watching a television drama about the Rochdale grooming sex scandal, and appeared to become radicalized after reading posts by Britain First and far-right leader Tommy Robinson. Now, hint within that little paragraph is that perhaps we shouldn't even be showing television dramas about the so-called sex scandal, or what I call the mass rape of underage girls. We shouldn't even be showing them. Let's not show these. These just whip up support for the so-called far right. Let's deny it. Let's pretend it isn't happening. And when we do that, what'll happen? More and more girls will be gang raped by Muslim gangs because we're not allowed to talk about it. It goes on to say that Mr. Robinson and Jada Franson, deputy leader of Britain First, sent Mr. Osborne messages the days before the attack. Sent Mr. Osborne messages. Once again, the implication is enormously suggests that Tommy Robinson is in direct contact with this man, even though they have actually stated on Twitter that that is not the case, that it was merely a subscription. These lies are poison. This is poison. I don't know how these people can look at themselves in the mirror. They must know they are doing this, or perhaps the indoctrination is that strong. Now let's just have a look at other articles and headlines that the Independent paper, which is where this is from, has published in the last couple of years. Now, when the Harvey Weinstein sex scandal broke, the Independent decided to respond to this with an article, and again, I'll send this out. This is the same Independent which continues to imply that Tommy Robinson is in direct contact with Darren Osborne. The headline it chose, or a headline it chose, was "How the Teachings of Islam Could Help Us Prevent More Sexual Abuse Scandals." Now, like me, you may be wondering just what teachings they are. Perhaps it is the Quranic teaching that women should always be obedient or else you can beat them. Or perhaps it's the example set by Muhammad in which women can be stoned to death for adultery or for being raped if she can't provide any witnesses. Or perhaps it's the Muhammad's example set in marrying a 6-year-old girl, an example which still results in the forced marriage of little girls all over the world today. Do you really think that any of those would stop sexual abuse scandals? Well, it certainly won't stop sexual abuse, but perhaps it's the scandals they're more worried about. Now, Islamic indoctrination and propaganda in schools is well known about in this country. Children are we've seen several examples of children being taken to mosques and children being giving the Shahada, the declaration of becoming a Muslim, halal food everywhere. And it's been in the news. It's been in the news, and I will again post a report that I wrote for Sharia Watch UK on Islam in British schools, and I'll post it straight after this. But one of the articles published by The Independent in response to so-called Islamic extremism in schools was, and I'll read it to you, "The Prophet Muhammad had British values, so the only way to combat extremism is to teach more Islam in schools." It goes on to tell us how Islam is a beacon of individual freedom and that the West has consistently misunderstood the teachings of Muhammad. Now, it's a terrible, terrible coincidence then that almost the entire Islamic world has also completely misunderstood Muhammad, especially with regard to religious freedoms and the freedoms of the individual. For pretty much every Islamic state on the planet punishes people, often with death, for leaving their religion or for criticizing Islam. So it seems to me that the world's senior imams and the world's Islamic states have also completely misunderstood Muhammad and have made a dreadful mistake. Get used to this. Get used to this. This is not an accident. What we will see, and what we are already seeing, and we will see more of, is the utter demonization, stigmatization, outright slander against anyone who speaks truths, uncomfortable truths about Islam. Meanwhile, headings about how the teachings of Muhammad are the answer to everything become more and more frequent in the mainstream press. Now, some people don't think that this is particularly important. It is absolutely vital. It is vital that we challenge this at every opportunity that presents itself. And this latest smear on Tommy Robinson is just such an opportunity. This is going in one direction and one direction only unless we push back. It is going in the direction of the criminalization of criticism of Islam. We already have that in a de facto sense. We have people arrested by police for so-called Islamophobic Facebook posts and several other examples. But it's only going to get worse. And where the real danger lies with the media publishing rubbish like this, the mainstream media publishing rubbish like this and propaganda like this, is that, hey, yes, people are waking up to the mainstream media and fewer people trust it. But millions still do believe what they read, and they still do make a decision, subconsciously or otherwise, based on headlines. Those headlines form opinions. They are important. But even more importantly than that is that the government will, and governments of the future will, use biased reporting like this to justify legal restrictions on people who criticize Islam. They will tell us that it is our fault, that Anders Breivik was our fault, that this attack on a mosque was our fault, and the only solution is to crack down on people who are critical of Islam. Governments use these headlines to oppress us. That is why it's so important that we answer back and we fight back and we expose these liars. And like I said, I sincerely hope that Tommy Robinson is seeking legal advice on this, because those headlines are still up there. It is an absolute scandal. And I and many, many others will continue to call you out on it and to tell the truth about what Islam really teaches and just how incompatible it is with our freedoms. And by the way, glossing over the horrors of what happens in the name of Islam and merely describing people condemning it and criticizing it or pointing it out as being the problem won't wash for much longer. We will continue to speak out against this. That's it for me for today. Tomorrow I am not here. Tomorrow I'm on the road. Tomorrow and Friday I'm on the road. Lots to do tomorrow, as we have, of course, got our first public meeting tomorrow night in Plymouth. And if you're in Plymouth or the surrounding area, please do try and make it along. I've posted the details on my Twitter account and on Facebook of where we'll be. So I shall be back here on Monday at 11. And if I don't see you tomorrow night in Plymouth, then have a great weekend, and we'll see you back here. Take care.
We will make America great again.